Socialism is not kindness. I made a poll, and the poll is pretty interesting. You can see the poll right here. And I asked, should all forms of work provide a livable wage? And it was really sad, the answer. Almost 3,000 votes, 2.9 thousand, almost 3,000 votes. And most people said yes. 68% of people said yes. Only 25% said no. 5% said, I don't know. 2% said, I don't care, which was very alarming because usually the I don't cares are just so significant. And it was only at 2%. So most people cared. Only 5% sadly said they don't know. They really didn't think about it. And 68% just immediately jumped on and said, no, yeah, pretty much every job should provide a livable wage. And that was very, very unfortunate to see. So I pinned the comment right here. This one came from Jolene, and she said, markets should dictate wages. Supply and demand is all that matters. And I agree entirely, But then if you go down and you look at the responses, so someone responds, assuming the market is actually free and the political party doesn't favor the rich, and we aren't bailing out corporations and giving already rich people inventions that the government has made with our tax dollars, then yes, I agree, free markets should be how society operates. The hypocrisy is that society currently passes policy and operates in complete and on their favor for the already wealthy. We need to remove lobbyists. We need to remove superdelegates. We need real free direct democracy and free markets. And I agree with that statement. That statement I said I agree with. However, there are people who don't agree with that. For example, TR says, no, everybody deserves to be paid for work. But their definition for work is basically being paid a livable wage. All right. And it just goes downhill. I responded and I said, I responded to Navia. Navia said, if you did that, the psychology branch and many others would be underpaid despite being necessary. I'm for the more time you invest in a craft, the more luxury you should be able to afford, but all wages as a whole should be livable. So I don't agree with that. All wages should not be livable. I responded and said, with that belief, then someone working at McDonald's in New York City should be making around $50 to $60 an hour, which would equate to $100,000 to $120,000 per year. Do you really think that's fair and feasible? That only results in the cost of fast food becoming more inaccessible. Saying that low effort and low skilled work should result in people being handed a comfortable middle class life is unreasonable. Navi responds, if that's the value of a job, if that value of a job just dictate the skill levels higher and you got yourself open competition. So you think we need to pay high salaries to college professors teaching garbage subjects instead? I'd rather have a burger. So they believe that a McDonald's employee should make more or the same amount as a college professor if they don't like what that college professor is teaching, especially. That's an advanced level of stupidity. That the market should be dictated whether or not you like what the job that someone is doing. It's an extreme level of stupidity that we have here. And let's see. So there were some more comments afterwards. So the third response, then getting a job would be even more difficult than it is now for many people who are applying to many positions. Also, if McDonald's employees get that much, you're going to have the nurses and doctors and everyone from everything be working at McDonald's. And then who's going to be the nurses and doctors and housekeepers and cooks and police and firefighters? You'll have all those people who work in McDonald's because it pays well. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Those jobs would become ultra competitive then. So everyone would be competing for those ultra competitive, low skilled, high paying jobs. Why am I going to go and study for years to become a physician or a chemical engineer and learn all of this high level math and calculus and all of this other stuff, or study aviation and become a commercial pilot when I can go and find a job that doesn't require much of me? I can go and deliver food and make $50 or $60 an hour, right? I can go and become a waitress and make $50 or $60 an hour. I could, I can basically, so everyone would be fighting. Everyone would be fighting for these jobs. Everyone would be fighting for these low wage jobs. And eventually you would end up with oversaturation. We're already beginning to see that there's oversaturation occurring in the gig economy. And even though no one seems to care, that is the reality. That is 100% the reality, that we are now beginning to see oversaturation in the gig economy, where you have people who are doing things like DoorDash and Uber Eats, all fighting for the same exact jobs, fighting for the same work. It's crazy. Guys, socialism is not kindness. People like to think that it is. It's not kindness. Socialism ultimately leads to tyranny. You can look at what's happening in Venezuela right now, and they're not having a good time over there. Okay? This is how it happens in all of these countries. That it happened in Venezuela, even in countries like Jamaica. If you ever study the history of Jamaica, when Jamaica became independent from the United Kingdom, they had a great economy, and then someone got the great idea, hey, there are people in the country who could be doing a lot better. It's about kindness. So they began experimenting with socialism. It destroyed their economy. Now they have something like 20% unemployment in the country, and they've never recovered from socialism, right? Because guys, how do you think we ended up with communism in China? Okay, you had the poor rice farmers, and basically they took over the country. When the military was at its weakest, the communists took over the country, and it plunged the country into deep poverty. The only reason that China has recovered and become a superpower is because sometime I forget if it was in the 70s or 80s, they began experimenting with capitalism, and that's what led to China becoming a superpower. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have happened. It's crazy. Look at Cuba. Cuba is a communist country, and look at the state that Cuba has been in. They've never been able to come out of it. All right? It remains a communist country to this day. And there's extraordinary poverty in Cuba. And no one learns their lesson. They absolutely do not learn their lesson. Look at what's happening with Maduro right now. Look at this. It's tyranny, absolute tyranny. You cannot speak freely. You cannot question them. He's talking about creating, places where people will be brought to be re-educated. Come on, y'all, wake up and realize, like, this is the hell on earth that a lot of people want to bring to the United States. This notion of well, it's about kindness. Everyone should be able to make a livable wage, regardless of what they actually produce or what skills they bring or what work they're doing. It's about kindness. That's what happened to the Roman Empire. They said it was about kindness. They put out this message of kindness, but there was really no tolerance for any other ideas beyond what they would accept. And they began giving, women began receiving increasing rights. It started with no fault divorce. And what ended up happening? The men basically abandoned the empire. Okay? And all of the empire's assets went towards subsidizing the living of the livelihood of women in the empire. And the men that were left in the empire, they were the children of Chad and Tyrone. All right. And Chad and Tyrone are brokies. They don't produce anything. So now you had young, angry, often violent men in the empire. And the men that had any value, they basically walked away completely. And they refused to produce. They refused to do anything. They refused to protect the empire. And even though the empire began punishing them, forcing them to run in the streets like chain gang style in the wintertime because they refused to marry, it didn't make any difference. These men gave up. When you begin to penalize the people who produce in your country and force them to subsidize others, they eventually just give up and walk away and say, do it yourself. And no matter how wealthy you are, everything will eventually crumble down. You will eventually have nothing left. You will eventually run out of other people's money. You will not even have people to do your will, to do your bidding, because they get fed up and they walk away. And then what ends up happening? Very, very bad people come along. In the case of the Roman Empire, it was the barbarians. And the barbarians realized that the Roman Empire didn't have any money, didn't have the ability to protect itself. And they pillaged the empire all the way from Europe straight to Africa. They pillaged it, and we were plunged into 1,000 years of darkness. It's unbelievable. I don't know. It's so sickening. It's so sickening, the future that we're looking at right now. And there's so many people in support of this. So many people in support of socialism and downright communism. And they call it kindness. We'll end up with nothing. What do you guys think regarding this? Do you agree socialism isn't kindness? Let me know your thoughts and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA and walking away. And cheers.